doing is causing chaos and distrust. They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is to ICE, get out of Minneapolis.
And tonight, President Trump issued the following statement. I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis. He says the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defence. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but he's now recovering in hospital. The reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. Right, let's dive into this because it can be a little bit hard to understand what's happening here if you live in the UK. And I don't mean that from a factual point of view, but I mean, Jennifer, from an emotional point of view of how heightened tensions are in the US about the actions of ICE over the last 12 months since Donald Trump got into office. And we are edging towards exactly a year since his inauguration. So just help people at home in the UK, at least, understand why this is so controversial.
Sure. So, and the first thing I'd say is what a difference a week makes. A week ago tonight, I was sitting in California watching the news, and it was also all about Minneapolis, but it was about the $9 billion of Somali fraud, right? And then, so Minneapolis has been very over-indexed in the news over the last few weeks. But the reason why ICE is controversial is because America is made up of a lot of immigrants, mostly legal, but some illegal. And the illegal situation got way worse over the 4 years of the Biden administration. The borders were wide open, it was out of control, and there was a lot of crime that happened. Yeah. Part of what people voted for in November 2024 was for Trump to close the border and to deport criminals. So, as I think you mentioned in an earlier segment, we've seen almost 2 million people self-deport, which is great. A lot of the deterrents are working. A lot of other people have been caught by ICE. But there's things that happen in the middle, and the optics are not always great. Like if you see, for example, people getting arrested at the Home Depot, and it's somebody who actually is legal and not a criminal, that's a problem. But that is not the main story that's going on. I mean, again, I just spent 2 weeks in California. While it might be anecdotal, I did ask people, these are people who are not Trump supporters, and said, is your gardener, is the abuela, is the waiter getting arrested for no reason whatsoever? And the answer is no. But people who are against Trump and people who have a problem with this are going to play up situations like this. Obviously, this woman lost her life. That's very unfortunate. But just to say ICE are the bad guys is also not helpful either. Yeah.
Chapman, what's your perception on the work that ICE is doing? Because your illegal migration problem has been fixed categorically down to statistically 0 for the last few months. And part of that is because of this very hard line, demonstrably, empirically. You can see what will happen to you. The messaging via ICE is so clear from President Trump. If you come into our country illegally, we will find you. Even if it's in the dead of night, we will knock on your door, we will detain you, we will process you, and if you don't deserve to be there, you don't have a right to be, we'll send you home. It's actually, when you think about it like that, it's a miracle that these incidents don't happen more often.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing you have to look at with this zero illegal immigration, a lot of that is down to a former policy that started many administrations ago, and it, fairly or unfairly, was called like catch and release, where essentially people would come into the United States, they would be processed, and while they were waiting to see if they could stay or not, they would allow them to stay in the United States until they were either caught or... Now, what happened is people were able to disappear if they were there illegally and had no right to be there.
But they could still be working and earning money.
Right. So now that doesn't happen. You cross the border, you go back. So that's where that is. Is illegal immigration still happening? It probably is. You cannot completely shut down the border, but known people crossing do not stay in America anymore. So that is why that statistically is down to 0. That said, while a lot of people voted for immigration control, that it was getting out of control, particularly in the previous years. There have been a lot of opinion polls now that the methods of ICE are too heavy-handed, that they don't agree with the method of it being done. So they said that they would scale it back and only focus on criminals, and as Trump said, the worst of the worst, though that doesn't really seem to be the case exactly.
We'll see what Tim Dosha thinks in our DC studio. And as you can see, we're keeping an eye on those pictures there in Minneapolis. Tim, what's your take on this? Because everybody brings something slightly different to this ICE issue as to how they feel about illegal migration. And are some of the wrong people being swept up in this process who actually are contributing to society, are well-liked and are not criminals?
Well, absolutely, and President Trump would agree with that. In fact, when you talk about H-1B visas, H-2 visas, these are very, very specific visas that allow immigrants to come into the country legally, allows us to vet them, it allows us to fill needs that we have, like every other country around the world has. So there is definitely a need for immigrants. In fact, in the last 10 years, half of the new workforce in the United States of America is from foreign-born workers, from people who have come here to take the job. So we do need immigrants. However, I think that there's a narrative that's just kind of being assumed, and a narrative that we are playing with, which ICE are somehow, these agents are somehow, you know, these villains walking around grabbing people off the streets. I have it on very good authority, and this is not just anecdotal, that ICE are extremely professional, and law enforcement is not always a pretty sight. And that is exactly what you're seeing here. We're going to see the evidence come in. I wouldn't dare do what the mayor did and automatically say that this, you know, jump to a conclusion and set the narrative to stoke up protests and riots, just like he did back in 2020. He has a history of this. I would not do that. I would wait for the evidence to come in, Bev, and I would say, okay, this is what happens. By the way, all you have to do is look at the video. The guy was in front of the car. The agent was in front of the car as it was coming toward him. That right there, that alone is her abruptly accelerating toward him, him defending himself and the other people around him in a very cold, icy, snowy situation. Look, you can defend it all you want, but if you're behind the wheel of a car, you're responsible for what happens in that car, and you can't take a chance in those situations, and unfortunately, we saw the outcome.
Yeah. OK, Tim, thank you for your take. Let me know at home what you think. GBnews.com/your say. We're going to be bringing you live updates, of course, throughout the show. But sticking with the US and the White House and how they feel about Britain, well, they have dismissed us as weak. Let's talk to the Telegraph's Rob Crilly to find out more about this. Now, good evening, Rob. Now, this is all about Venezuela. So you are the journalist who broke this story. Tell us what happened, Rob.
Well, it's quite simple. We had the extraordinary raid on Saturday to capture Nicolas Maduro, the illegitimate president of Venezuela. And of course, there was reaction from all over the world. You'll remember Sir Keir Starmer said, we shed no tears for the end of the Maduro regime. And then he very quickly pivoted to saying he underlined the importance of the rule of international law. Rather a muted response in comparison with the way the news had been received in the US. So I went to the White House yesterday and I asked them, in the context of the broader US-UK special relationship, the close relations we know they have on matters of military and security, you know, was this rather lukewarm response at all disappointing? And you know what I was told? I was told, well, look, actually it comes as no great surprise. They're just weak, which of course is one of the strongest terms of dismissal Trump administration officials will use. They are all about strong government, decisive actions, and to call someone weak is really a huge dismissal.
It really is. One of the phrases that we hear Pete Hegseth say, the Secretary of War, repeatedly is strength, peace through strength. This administration talk about strength, and in unequivocal terms, it's a sign of confidence to them. Weak is the worst word that could be used about Sir Keir Starmer. What does this tell us, though, do you think, Rob, about that relationship between President Trump and Keir Starmer, the relationship between the US and the UK, because every time President Trump is asked about this, I've asked him, you've asked him, we've both been there together asking him that question, he talks about the wonderful relationship that he has with the UK. Do you think he's lying about that, or is it about the sentimentality that he has because it feels very connected to the UK?
Yeah, look, there's a whole bunch of details we can talk about here. It is an odd relationship. I mean, Sir Keir Starmer, the human rights lawyer, and the big, bold, brash businessman who likes to run riot over rules and laws wherever he can, somehow they've struck up a cordial relationship. I think, yes, some of it is based on Donald Trump's links to the UK. His mother, of course, was Scottish, and he has a great fondness for the United Kingdom. We were at his golf course in Scotland together, weren't we?
Yeah.
And you could see his fondness for the country, but also the awkwardness with Sir Keir Starmer. I remember how he criticised Sir Keir Starmer's friend, the Mayor of London, and talked up Nigel Farage. Some very awkward moments there. So it is an odd relationship, which I think we're going to see those policy differences will bring ups and downs.
I'm like a coiled spring to get back, Rob, to DC, and I will be on the plane in the next couple of days. I'll be back on air from the studio with you from Monday next week. But what's the mood like in DC at the moment and around the White House? Because I cannot believe how much they've done. I mean, talk about get out of the starting gates quickly in the first few days of 2026. I assumed this year was going to be a little quiet, naively. What do you make of it all, and what's the mood like there?
Well, for those of us who remember the first term, I mean, buckle up. This is the way Trump rolls. Look, the important point I'd make, actually, his poll numbers have been in the doldrums. So I think we all expected him to start the new year with a bang. I didn't quite expect it to be quite so explosive with the action in Venezuela. One thing I would say on the UK-US relationship, actually, is hot off the presses. David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, is actually here at the moment, and he's going to be meeting with the Vice President J.D. Vance tomorrow. They'll talk policy, they'll talk Venezuela, they'll talk Greenland, of course, but I'm also told the Vice President and the Second Lady, Usha, will be having dinner at the British Ambassador's residence in the evening. And I just wonder whether the Brits are going to use the close relationship between David Lammy and J.D. Vance as a way to make sure they can keep things on track. Those two have struck up quite the friendship over the past couple of years.
It seems a little bit of an unlikely friendship, though. You've got J.D. Vance there, the absolute cheerleader, the poster boy for free speech, who at the Munich conference last year did not hold back in telling Europe and the UK how he feels that we should be handling the issue of free speech. And you've got David Lammy, who is very much on board with what appears to be a more authoritarian messaging from the UK government. That seems like an unlikely friendship.
It is, isn't it? And I think that's the thing we're getting used to with this Trump administration, isn't it? It's about the personal relationships. Yeah. There are going to be policy differences. There are going to be differences in the way things are presented. But we know that David Lammy and J.D. Vance have bonded over religion, for example. They've attended Mass together. The families have spent time together. Remember the slightly awkward fishing expedition at Chevening, the Foreign Secretary's grace and favour mansion last year. And we know they also both come from rather humble backgrounds. So again, it's those personal similarities I think have helped bonded them together, despite, J.D. Vance loses no opportunity, misses absolutely no chance to put the boot into Britain and some of what he sees as attacks on freedom of speech.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, thank you so much. I hope you're not doing dry January. I'll buy you a beer next week. It's a terrible idea, in my opinion.
Good Lord, no.
That's why I enjoy being in Washington. Rob Crilly there, US correspondent at The Telegraph, who broke that story about the White House viewing Great Britain as being weak. Let's go to a man who is not weak now, GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. And Nigel, the reason you're not weak is because you are having to get stronger and stronger every single week on this channel to defend this government against accusations such as being weak over Venezuela. Was he? Is the White House right about that?
No, I don't think he was. That look, Keir Starmer uses flattery and fawns over the president because that's what's required. but he's not Trump's lickspittle either. So I don't think this was weakness. We had nothing to do with what happened in Venezuela. So the only comment that Keir Starmer made was there was a question, and I think that question is still there, over the legitimacy of what President Trump did, and the question of whether he broke international law. Now, Keir Starmer and President Trump have spoken on the phone tonight. They've talked about Ukraine, they've talked about Venezuela, they've talked about today's joint operation against the oil tanker. So we still have a reasonable relationship with the White House.
For now. And as we were just hearing then, David Lammy is seeing J.D. Vance tomorrow. And, of course, J.D. Vance does not have that sentimentality about the UK in the way that President Trump has. It will be very interesting to see. I mean, I'm very much looking forward ahead to the future here, Nigel. But if Trump is no longer in the White House, will we have such a good relationship, do you think, with the US in the next few years?
Well, I mean, America is still remains our closest ally. It doesn't mean that we always have to agree with them. So if you go back to probably what was the closest relationship between Britain and America, it was when Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were there. Now, they were actually genuine friends. But when America invaded Grenada, a Commonwealth country, without telling us, Thatcher really gave him what for. Now, that's what friends should be for. We're not going to agree with everything that America does, and nor should we. We can park Venezuela because it was nothing to do with us. Greenland becomes a completely different issue. And again, Keir Starmer tonight made it clear our position over Greenland, which is that President Trump shouldn't annex it.
OK, Nigel, thank you so much. Good to see you. Nigel Nelson there. Let me know what you think at home. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
We will smash the gangs, we will crack down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
Credit where credit's due. One of Britain's most wanted migrant gang leaders is behind bars tonight. So why could this actually make Britain's border problem worse? But first.
Following a request from the US, I authorised the use of UK bases and the deployment of Royal Navy and RAF assets to support the operation.
Another oil tanker seized, and tonight the Defence Secretary confirms Britain was involved. Have we just dived headfirst into something bigger than we can handle? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Quick reminder of that breaking news tonight. An American immigration officer has fatally shot a woman who the Department of Homeland Security says was attempting to run over the ICE agent. Now, Kristi Noem gave a statement just moments ago, the Homeland Security Secretary, and she was making a very strong statement in defence of these agents. They are very controversial, the people doing this job. In fact, Jennifer, there were adverts, weren't there, recently in the US asking for more people to join ICE.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'll get regularly advertised on Twitter, Instagram or whatever. Yeah. $50,000 signing bonus if you join ICE. I know a ton of people who have applied for the jobs. You know, it was a top 2 voting issue in the United States in 2024. So it's something that people take seriously. And, you know, as much as people don't want all of these foreign wars, they certainly want their own borders protected. So, of course, a lot of people are going to want to go to work for ICE.
Yeah. OK, we'll bring you the updates throughout the evening. You can see here the live pictures of Minneapolis where crowds are gathering to protest this woman's loss of life. I said earlier on Patrick's show where George Floyd was killed is a few blocks around the corner from this.
No, exactly. And, you know, I mentioned it earlier, and I'm sorry, I just can't help but think this is a very, very convenient diversion from what was last week the biggest unveiling of fraud in Minneapolis. And the governor is implicated in this. So, coincidence, maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, right. Let's move on. First of all, this evening, Britain has today assisted the US in seizing another oil tanker as it travelled northward between Iceland and Scotland. So RAF spy planes, UK air bases and Royal Navy refuelling support were all used as American forces intercepted the vessel after a 2-week pursuit. Russia has since responded, calling the seizure a violation of maritime law, with Russian media claiming the US was edging the world closer to nuclear war. And Defence Secretary John Healey made this statement a little earlier today in the Commons.
The UK supported this action to achieve 3 objectives. First, to enforce counter-Iran sanctions. Second, to tackle the global security threat posed by expanding shadowy maritime activity. And third, to reinforce British homeland defence and security in this era of rising threats.
So let's speak now to the US Army Colonel and retired combat veteran, a man of immense insight and experience, Colonel McGregor. So good to see you again. Thank you so much. So what do you make of the Russian accusation that the seizure is a violation of maritime law and that doing so edged us closer to nuclear war?
Well, virtually everybody who is a legal expert, and I am not a legal expert, and I'm not an expert on maritime law, but the people in the United States who are have all said exactly the same thing. Yes, this is a violation of maritime law. You had a vessel that was flagged, and they were flagged by the Russians. They had re-registered as a Russian vessel. and they were in the open seas, the high seas, and there was no justification to do what we did legally. Now, having said that, nobody in Washington cares about international law. And in all the years that I was on active duty, I didn't see very many people that ever expressed any concern about international law. I think great powers do what they can and small powers do what they have to.
And in your experience, Colonel McGregor, what's your assessment been of President Trump's behaviour over the last, whatever it is, a week to 10 days now, in relation to Venezuela, the threats being made against Greenland, etc.? What's your assessment of his approach?
Well, just to finish up on the first question, because I didn't answer it completely, the Russians are not going to go to a major war over an empty tanker floating in the middle of the ocean. That's not going to happen. And the people who are making these strident remarks are not necessarily speaking for President Putin. That doesn't mean they're not important. They're not in the circle of people that he talks to, but President Putin has the final word, and nothing like that has come out of his mouth. Now, as for the rest of it, I think President Trump is in a difficult position. He has no strategy. There is no national strategy whatsoever. That was evident at the press conference, which I'm sure you saw, where he was talking and somebody said, well, now that this is over, what's next? Which is always the important question. Getting into a place like Venezuela is not very difficult to do what we did, especially when you have flooded the place with tens of millions of dollars and bought everybody off who might otherwise interfere with you. So the question was, what do you do now? And his answer was, well, we're going to run Venezuela for a while. And people sort of stood around and said, what? And he said, oh, yeah, sure. And then he turned around and said, well, Marco, Secretary of State Rubio, well, come up here and help me out. Talk about this. There's no plan. They have no plan. Everything was predicated on a set of assumptions that haven't held up. Venezuela is a place that has nearly 30 million people living in it. It's the size of Germany, France, and Austria combined. You have triple canopy jungle for much of it and enormous mountains. The infrastructure, transportation-wise, inside the country is terrible. You have a lot of excellent mining opportunities to extract resources, but all of that has fallen into ruins and disuse. You have an oil industry that badly needs work to recover. Telling everybody that oil is somehow or another going to pay for this is reminiscent to what Paul Wolfowitz said back in 2003 when he was Deputy Secretary of Defense. Oh, I wouldn't worry about the costs. Iraqi oil will pay for everything. Well, that didn't happen. And this time around, the oil infrastructure is in very bad shape. Most of the people that I trust that are in the petroleum business tell me, Douglas, it'll take 5 to 10 years to get Venezuela back up to 3 million barrels a day, which is what they were doing when they were very successful. Now it's less than 1 million barrels a day. So I think President Trump now has to answer some questions. Are we going to go into Venezuela and try to fix it, make it into something it's not? Are we going to try and modify the society? Are we going to put troops on the ground? He said he would. Or are we going to accept the fact that this is too big? We just can't do it. It's prohibitively expensive, and we're going to have to do business with a government which is there, which is why, frankly, I and a lot of other people said, if Maduro is giving you everything that you want, and President Trump said he was, why aren't we signing the deal? Why don't we go through it? We don't want to govern this place.
I knew you'd be fascinating on this, and I could talk to you all night as usual, but we will have you on again soon because we're so short on time this evening. There's a lot going on in the world. Colonel McGregor, thank you so much. Right, still to come this evening.
We need Greenland from a national security situation.
Denmark threatens to shoot first, ask questions later as the White House doubles down on plans to take over the country. But is anyone really prepared to pull the trigger? This is The Late Show live only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You have the power then. Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. We've been just chatting in the studio here about Conor McGregor's accusation that President Trump doesn't have a plan when it comes to Venezuela. Do you think he does? Do let me know, gbnews.com/yoursay. Now, Denmark has confirmed that its soldiers will be required to shoot first and ask questions later. That's a quote, if the United States tries to invade Greenland. It follows recent comments made by the President and the White House over the importance of Greenland to American national security.
The acquisition of Greenland by the United States is not a new idea. This is something that presidents dating back to the 1800s have said is advantageous for America's national security.
Tonight, Downing Street has said that the Prime Minister has set out his position on Greenland in a phone call with President Trump tonight. Now, here is a reminder of his public position on this.
The future of Greenland is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark, and for Greenland and the future of Denmark only.
So let's talk now to my panel about this. Political commentator Jennifer Ewing and journalist Chapman Bell. And we've got Tim Dosha, the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity over in Washington, D.C. Let me come to you first on this, Chapman. Then, I mean, what do we think is really going on here? It is very difficult when it comes to the Prime Minister of this country to genuinely work out how he feels about things, because he seems to flip-flop around. I mean, you don't get the straightforward, forthright view as you get from President Trump.
Well, the fact is, Trump says what he believes, and if you disagree with him, then you're wrong. And with Greenland, it's something he's consistently come back to. And, I was reading a lot about it today, and, I've known there's been U.S. troops there for some time, and particularly starting with the Cold War, they realized it was a very crucial point for any ICBMs or any other, munitions coming from Russia to the United States. They had a big presence there. The United States could still have a big presence there. It's a NATO country. So to say it's strategic for national security, well, then we can put more soldiers there. I don't know why it's so important that it is American. Now, what a lot of people are pointing out is, similarly to Venezuela, Greenland also has a lot of natural resources.
Yeah.
So is it for national security, or is there something beneficial as well for America there? Now, who knows what the reasoning behind it is, but bottom line is, are you going to, it's a bizarre event for a NATO country to invade another NATO country. Mm-hmm. So this talk of military is kind of bizarre. Talking about buying it
is also
so, if it's strategic to national, security, then why don't they have these diplomatic discussions about how they utilize it for that reason?
Have you noticed, Jennifer, that President Trump is coming out in his usual way and sort of just, shooting from the hip? And then you've got Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, in the background. So he seems to be providing a little bit of ballast, let's say, and balance to some of the rhetoric from Trump. And he rose back a little bit on what President Trump is saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think also you've seen all the memes where, Rubio's the new Shah of Iran, who's the new president of Venezuela. Yeah. God knows what he'll be in Greenland.
He has a lot of jobs.
Snowsuit. He's got a lot of snowsuits, a lot of jobs, exactly. But no, I think Trump has been very clear from the beginning. He sees Greenland as very important strategically for the United States. Everything we know from that 33-page NSS document is about hemispheric sort of importance for the United States going forward. And I think there's no talk of real invasion. As you just said, he's talking of actually writing checks to people, which is insane. But, do the math, perhaps. That's what the people of Greenland, perhaps they have self-determination if they want. I mean, it does seem ridiculous that we're having this conversation, but like you guys said, I don't think we thought we'd be talking about half the things we're talking about today.
Exactly.
2 weeks ago, Venezuela, for example, was never discussed in the lead up to the U.S. election, and that's all we've talked about for the last week. So
let's bring in Tim from D.C. Tim Dosha there. Tim, it's the first time I've spoken to you this week with all of this happening. And what do you think is Trump's motivation with Venezuela? Is it about natural resources? Have we stepped into the future where global leaders have to fight for the resources that the planet has to offer? I thought that was stuff of movies that was going to be in the future, but apparently we're there now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things going on here, so we're going to need at least an hour to talk about it, and we can do that, Bev, because it's late night live. But what I'll say is this: we got to, and this goes back to Colonel McGregor. Look, we're going to end the war in Russia and Ukraine, and if you keep feeding the beast, look, 1/3 of all government revenue in Russia is from oil. It's from gas. It's from energy. And so Trump knows that. He knows that their economy is in shambles, and he knows that if you can bring people to the negotiating table, that's a good thing. Also, you have the Iran situation happening. Also, you have China saying that they're going to invade Taiwan, and they rely on Venezuelan oil. So this is a play for oil. And it is a play to control some of that light sweet crude, I believe it is, which we can then refine in the Gulf of Mexico and then be able to do with it as we see. And it's not like we're taking it. We will, give the money to the Venezuelans. And then also when it comes to the minerals like you're talking about, they're very mineral rich. They've got gold. They've got, all the minerals that we need as well. But again, we've got a lot of those. So I do think that this really is about the more larger picture. And most of all, it's about ending that war between Russia and Ukraine. And you see Russia peacocking today because of that.
Yeah, let's talk to, thank you, Tim. Let's talk to former aide to Margaret Thatcher, friend of the show, Niall Gardner. Niall, I've been wanting to talk to you all week because these are so many topics that you know in such great detail of what these conflicts are really about. What is happening with Venezuela? What is happening with Greenland? And what does it tell us about President Trump?
Well, great to see you, Bev. And those are all extremely important questions. I think, starting with Venezuela, what a spectacular military operation, a great success. And clearly, President Trump is sending a message about U.S. global power. And he's also outflanking America's top adversaries, including China and Russia. And so I do think that what we have seen in the past few days is the projection of American military might on the world stage. President Trump cares a lot about that. He's exorcised the ghosts of Joe Biden's humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I do think that, President Trump seriously believes in projecting American power on the world stage, and that's what he's doing. With regard to Greenland also, at the same time, I don't think that there is any serious expectation here in Washington of US military action to take Greenland, but you are going to see sustained pressure, of course, on Denmark, and potentially an offer to purchase Greenland from Denmark. After all, President Truman made an offer, I think, back in 1946 to buy Greenland, which Denmark, of course, sort of rebuffed at the time. But you could see a similar kind of offer today. And clearly the White House is greatly concerned about Chinese ambitions in the Arctic, which are growing by the day. And also there's a fear and concern following the Chagos surrender deal by Keir Starmer that European governments are willing, of course, to give away their overseas territories to allies of China, which you saw with the deal with Mauritius over the Chagos Islands.
Yeah.
And Greenland is an overseas territory of Denmark. European leadership is spectacularly weak. So that's a real concern that China could actually step in here.
Now, we're short on time, but I can't wait to see you in Washington, D.C. next week. My friend Niall Gardner there, former aide to Margaret Thatcher. And in fact, Niall has written a piece for the Daily Telegraph about the Chagos Islands. It's an issue he feels really strongly about. I would urge you to look that up to see what he says about that, because that is also coming to a head internationally. Now, still to come, we're going to bring you an update on that fatal shooting from Minneapolis, which has sparked reaction from top White House officials, including the president. But also tonight, the man behind thousands of illegal small boat crossings in this country, in the UK, has been put behind bars. But maybe it could mark anything but the end of Britain's border chaos. I'll tell you why in just a moment. Stay with me.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. From London, this is my last night here. The Late Show Live will be coming from DC for you from tomorrow night, and I'll be back in the studio on Monday. Now, let's return to the breaking news out of Minneapolis. A US immigration officer has been fatally shot a woman who the Department of Homeland Security says allegedly attempted to run over immigration and customs enforcement agents. This is the footage of the incident here. There are other angles. We're not showing you those at the moment. The Secretary of State for Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, gave this statement.
I've spoken to the president today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots.
So that's Kristi Noem, the Secretary of State for Homeland Security. We also heard from the Democrat mayor, the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, who saw things very differently.
We collectively are going to do everything possible to get to the bottom of this. We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is to ICE, get out of Minneapolis.
And subsequently, President Trump issued this statement. He said, "I've just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis. The woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. The reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis." Let's talk now to Jennifer Ewing and Chapman Bell about this incident here. Jennifer, we discussed this in the first hour, but a lot of people are tuning in now as we edge towards 1 a.m. here in the UK and 8 p.m. in DC. It is fascinating to me as a Brit how quickly both sides come out and comment on this issue. And the mayor there using this issue to make political capital, saying we have been waiting for this. Just explain why he feels they've been waiting for something like this to happen.
Well, because there has been, since the ICE agents sort of became deputized and in charge of controlling the border, which I'll remind you, as you know, the top two voting issue in last year's election, people wanted to close the border and get violent criminals outside of the United States. So that's a messy process. It's not easy. It's not clean. Horrible things like this happen where this woman was just shot on accident. But this idea that somehow people can just decide whether whether or not they follow the law and listen to what an actual law enforcement agency is telling them is ridiculous. Like, she should have stopped her car and she should have listened to the people who were in charge. It's the same thing if you get pulled over on the street for speeding or whatever. If the police officer says, put your hands on the wheel, and you fight back, it escalates. People get shot, and that's what you're seeing. There's one side in these blue states that really feel that ICE are the bad guys.
Tim, let me bring you in down the line from DC. Thanks, Jen, because what we're seeing here, if we're looking at the motivations of this woman, sadly lost her life now, those people who are defending the victims, in inverted commas, the targets of ICE, they think they are doing what? What is it that they are signalling? What virtue do they believe they are demonstrating by protecting the people who ICE have in their sights?
Well, look, they want to disrupt what the president is doing. Let's make no mistake about this. This is a complete and total protest against Trump winning the election last year. So let's just keep that in mind here as we process this. Now, remember, President Obama deported just as many people almost as President Trump has. This is not an uncommon thing to deport people. So what is the difference? ICE was still in business back when Obama was president, back when Biden was president, back when Bill Clinton was president. They have been in business for a long time in this country because there have always been people coming across the border illegally. So what is this? It's the mayor and it's the governor and it's the former president stoking up protest, and then getting in the way of legitimate law enforcement business, which is an offense here in the United States of America. If you obstruct a police investigation or any police business, they have the right to arrest you. They don't even have to hit you. If you're obstructing, they put the cuffs on you and they take you downtown to the station to work it out. You don't get in the way of the police. And Jennifer, you are so right. Thank you for making that point.
Yeah.
That you listen to police in this country.
Thanks, Tim.
You listen to them.
Thank you. We got to take a very quick break. Stay with me. Back in just a minute.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
From London and Washington, D.C., this is The Late Show Live with stories shaping Britain and America, and breaking news out of Minneapolis tonight. US immigration officers have fatally shot a woman after she allegedly tried to run them over. She has recently been named, and we will tell you who she is in just a minute. This was the message from the local mayor.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. That is to ICE. Get the out of Minneapolis.
We'll bring you updates throughout the show as crowds gather to protest. Also tonight.
As you've seen today, 2 more ships were seized. We are in the midst right now and, in fact, about to execute on a deal to take all the oil. They have oil that is stuck in Venezuela. They can't move it because of our quarantine and because it's sanctioned. We are going to take between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil.
That's Secretary of State Marco Rubio there explaining that the United States seized another sanctioned oil tanker, this time with the support of British forces.
Following a request from the US, I authorised the use of UK bases and the deployment of Royal Navy and RAF assets to support the operation.
So is that Britain stepping up and getting involved with America?
The acquisition of Greenland by the United States is not a new idea. This is something that presidents dating back to the 1800s have said is advantageous for America's national security.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt there. The White House is digging in their heels. They are refusing to rule out a Greenland invasion. And despite Denmark threatening to shoot American soldiers first and ask questions later.
Now, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise.
And credit where it's due, the National Crime Agency's most wanted has been jailed for more than a decade. He's believed to have provided half of all the equipment used in illegal channel crossings in 2023. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Sorry about that. It's a longer walk here in the London studio back to my seat than it is in DC. The Late Show Live will be coming to you from DC with Ben Leo tomorrow night. My panel are still here with me. US political commentator Jennifer Ewing and journalist Chapman Bell with me in London, and joining us from Washington is the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Doscher. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. And what a huge amount of news we have to get through. Is it only the first week of 2026? Let's move on to the main news this evening from the UK. This is the story I've been trailing so far. It's about this Turkish businessman who became the National Crime Agency's most wanted, and he's been jailed for 11 years. Adam Savas is believed to have raked in millions while masquerading as the boss of a legitimate maritime supply company, when in reality investigators say that he was one of the key enablers of Britain's small boat crisis. Prosecutors say that Savas was the main importer of engines used by gangs running illegal channel crossings, supplying what they described as a package deal costing around £4,000 per boat. It's believed that his equipment was used in almost half of all illegal channel crossings in 2023. But Savas was arrested in Amsterdam in November 2024 before being extradited to Belgium. Since then, the numbers haven't fallen, of course. They have surged. And in 2025, illegal crossings rose sharply compared with the previous year, jumping from around 1,100 in January 2024 to nearly 4,600 in March, peaking at more than 5,400 in July and remaining consistently above 2024 levels for most of the year. So, Jennifer, you spend most of your time living in the UK. You understand what a big issue this is here. Is this Keir Starmer smashing the gangs?
Well, absolutely not. You know, as we've been talking about what the United States has been able to do since President Trump's been reelected and close the border, deport people and not allow new people in. And then, of course, people self-deport. No, I mean, the situation here has just continued to get worse and worse and worse. And I think, you know, it's probably one of the biggest divergences in the relationship between the UK and the US is why? I mean, the UK is a much smaller place. It's an island. I don't understand how we cannot protect our borders here. It seems to me if somebody, the government or whomever, wanted them to be protected, they would be. And the fact that this man was arrested and the numbers continue to go up just means it's a pretty good business to be in this boat situation. So there must be tons of other people that have sprung up and taken his place.
It can only be that. We're looking at the type of boats, these ribs, these rigid inflatable boats, are the kind of things that he was selling, Chapman. But we have to give some credit where it's due, don't we? Isn't this the way to stop illegal migration in the UK, is to cut off the supply of the equipment that gets them here?
Well, I think so. I mean, I've lived here for 26 years, and when I first came here, the big story was people hiding in the back of lorries and coming in the tunnel, you know, on the tunnel. So things have progressed now. Yes, that still happens, but you now have... The point is, people smuggling is a huge business. Yeah. And you have to cut off the gangs who are making a big living out of this. And it goes to people are immigrating, they're looking for a better life. They don't realize they're being taken advantage of by these people smuggling gangs. They're not going to have necessarily a better life, but these gangs are making millions. So more needs to be done at tackling, I think, where the smuggling operations are coming from. That will help reduce, because as you point out, it's an island. Yeah. There's only so many ways to get here.
Well, that's the incentives need to be cut off as well. The incentives to come here, and that's what we do in the United States, right? You cut off here you get a free hotel or you get a free card to use. Like, there's still a lot of good incentives to sneak across the channel and come to the United Kingdom.
Well, and I was going to point that out, like the Bulgarian gang that was making millions, tens of millions, building a city out of nowhere with, you know, casinos, because they had made an operation where people were coming over, they were taking a percentage. And this is the thing, the government doesn't even know it's happening, and it's been happening for some time, really.
Tim, let me bring you in from DC. When you realise that if you do buy yourself a ticket on one of these boats, and this guy has gone to prison now for this, 11 years, maybe that's not long enough, I don't know. But when you get off that boat, you will be looked after. You will be taken to a hotel, you will be given food and drink, and you will be given an allowance, and you will even be maybe given a mobile phone, even if you have your existing mobile phone taken off you. That was a new law this week. But as an American, when you hear how we treat people who arrive illegally in our country, what's your response?
Sounds like you're doing exactly what the Biden administration was doing, and making sure that you have, not only do you have all those free hotel rooms and free food and debit cards and all that stuff waiting for them, but you're also broadcasting over the radio and on TV into Mexico and into other nations, talking about how you can come to America and claim refugee status and get temporary status here. It is an incredible, I think, organized thing, at least here in America it is, to get the voter base up for the left wing. They have a lot of money invested in this. George Soros has a lot of money invested in this. A lot of the charities here in America who are left wing are helping assimilate these people. How do you think 100,000, 200,000 Somalis just end up in the same place in Minnesota? How do you think that happens? And that's exactly what's happening over in the UK. This is organized. I believe it. And like you said, it's different than America. You can't just cut it off at the border. There's water there, but I do think it's organized, and that has to be cut off.
Thank you, Tim. Let's talk to the Research Director for the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates. Very good evening. Good morning to you, Rob. Thank you for joining me. So is this something that we should give this government credit for, that this one guy, Savas, responsible for selling a lot of these engines that went on these boats, he was found, he was charged, he was taken to trial, he's been locked up, but is it enough?
Well, I think the government certainly want us to give them the credit for this this conviction, but I don't really know actually how much we can bestow the praise on the National Crime Agency or this government. It seems to me actually this was more done by European partners than actually anything this Labour government has introduced. So it's of course welcome that bad dudes end up in prison, but I think actually, as you alluded to, we know now empirically that actually taking these individuals out of the equation doesn't have an impact on the numbers coming across. So he was, arrested in 2024. We saw the 41,000 come across in 2025. His boss was arrested in 2023. We saw huge numbers come across after he was arrested, and other people step into his plate. And this is really a question of incentives and actually talking to those migrants that are looking to come into the UK and making them realise that it's not worth the risk. And when we talk about sort of the American context, what the Trump administration have been very successful at doing is effectively scaring the bejesus out of the people that were looking to make that crossing and made them realise that it simply isn't worth their while because they're going to face the might of the Department for Homeland Security and immigration enforcement officers. Unfortunately, we don't have that situation in play here at all. We're far too generous with the asylum system. We give individuals luxury accommodation whilst they're here, and then even if their asylum claim is rejected, which happens in a minority of cases, it's very unlikely that individuals will be removed back to Afghanistan and places like that. So the whole incentive structure that we've put in place in Britain is completely the wrong way around. And it's all very well and good playing a sort of game of whack-and-mole as each of these sort of guys crop up periodically and make a name for themselves as sort of multimillionaires. But the very fact that they are multimillionaires is indicative that there is a lot of money involved in this process. And therefore, if you take one out of the equation, another chap is simply going to step into his place.
Rob, I think something that we kind of fail to reflect upon enough, actually, is why does it matter that we restrict or stop illegal migration? It seems like an obvious question. I mean, people shouting at the TV, Bev, you're being an idiot. Of course it matters. But just remind us why it matters that we stop this number of people coming over here illegally.
The fiscal argument is straightforward. It cost us $4.9 billion in 2024, 2025. But I think the reason most people are concerned about this issue now is, the transformation that they're seeing in the communities. I don't think there's a local authority area now in Britain that's not been impacted by illegal migrants being put on their doorstep. And then in tandem with that, we are seeing an increase in crime. And there are case study after case study in the last year of individuals committing really, really awful sexual offences, murders, all kinds of drug trading and theft and robbery and organised crime that comes along with this. And the statistics show that those individuals coming across on a small boat, so up to 20 times more likely to be convicted of a sexual offence than a Brit. And I think many, many people now are seeing this chaos in the Channel and the direct impact it is having on their quality of life and how safe they feel in their communities, how secure they feel, whether they feel like they can even let their children out, because of course there are instances of hotels being put next to school playgrounds, schools, old people's homes as well. So it really is actually something that does impact pretty much every corner of the country. And this is why immigration is now the key issue amongst the electorate, not just because of the costs, and the government's very keen to sort of talk about closing asylum hotels to bring costs down. But the fact of the matter is, we don't want these numbers at all. We don't want these people coming into the country full stop. And this doesn't seem to be registering with ministers.
And do you think President Trump's success in this area has empowered people to have these conversations, be it over the water cooler at work or, with the family on a Sunday lunch? 12 months ago, it wasn't acceptable to talk about illegal migration as being problematic. And yet I think we are now able to do so much more freely, and that's got to be a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. He's exploded the sort of confines within which the conversation was allowed to take place. He's sort of drill down into the nuts and bolts of what this issue actually is, which is a sense of a nation's sovereignty being eroded. It's a sense of streets and communities being fundamentally transformed. You know, before sort of Trump was able to come to office and talk with the rhetoric that he's using, this was a conversation that was sort of really, really restrained into sort of those fiscal arguments, which yes are significant, but actually really do pale in comparison when it comes to those social and cultural costs that are being inflicted on the people of this country. So I do think, and you can see actually that it is really almost sort of become his mission to actually sort of shake Europe out of this stupor that it's found itself in. Really since 2015, when Angela Merkel, of course, threw open Europe's borders to a million or so individuals. So, you know, we're seeing some countries start to recognise actually that this is more than just a sort of spreadsheet phenomenon, and there is a lot more to this. It's almost a civilisational issue as to how we approach this issue, because if we don't clamp down on it, we really could see just a sort of a gentle petering out of national pride, of a sense of community, of everything that really matters and makes Europe Europe.
And just before you go, Rob, this situation in Minneapolis tonight, we've got protesters there on the streets because this woman lost her life. She was shot by an ICE agent, trying to apparently hold back ICE agents. We don't know exactly the details on her motivation. But when you see that tinderbox there happening in the US, what do you think about it? Do you wish we had something like ICE here? And do you think the British people would rise up in the numbers against those agents in the way that we're seeing in America?
Well, we technically do have an ICE, but it has a budget that's less than a lot of local councils. It has fewer staff than a lot of local councils. So it's really, really an under-resourced phenomenon. It won't ever be able to operate on the scale that, well, under this government, it's unlikely to direct funding to it. So it's not really going to operate on the same scale. I do think in certain communities there will inevitably be pushback because, of course, we have in this country a very, very well-funded open border companies, charities, all really actually being given taxpayers' money that make it their sole purpose actually to frustrate any semblance of border control. So there inevitably will be some kind of pushback communities sitting in front of vans and stuff like that. But I think any government that actually really wants to tackle this issue just has to swat aside those kind of objections and to sort of, you know, speak to the common sense majority of this country that do want to addressed.
OK, fantastic. Good to see you, Rob. Research Director for the Centre for Migration and Control, Rob Bates there, staying up late with us on The Late Show Live. Now, on the issue of illegal migration, Shabana Mahmood, Home Secretary, has previously said these small boat crossings are utterly unacceptable and the vile people smugglers behind them are wreaking havoc on our borders. Protecting the UK border is my priority as Home Secretary, and I will explore all options to restore order to our immigration system. Still to come on The Late Show Live tonight.
Responsibility for an atrocity that happened whilst I'm Prime Minister. And I'm sorry for what the Jewish community and our nation as a whole has experienced.
Australia's Prime Minister Albanese is under mounting pressure to open an inquiry into the Bondi terror attack. So why hasn't that happened? And what are we being told tonight? Also, here is a story you're not going to want to miss. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. We've got lots of stories you're not going to want to miss tonight. Let's quickly turn to that breaking news, though, out of Minneapolis. A US immigration officer has fatally shot a woman who the Department of Homeland Security says allegedly attempted to run over immigration and customs enforcement agents. That woman has now been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, an American citizen, a 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, a US citizen. Now, the Secretary of State for Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, gave this statement.
I've spoken to the president today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the. We're attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots.
We're just trying to find out some details of this woman who lost her life. We understand she's a 37-year-old. Renee Nicole Good, she says that she obviously, well, they're saying that she died in an act of self-defence. Trump said Good viciously ran over the ICE officer. The Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, said this angrily moments after.
We collectively are going to do everything possible to get to the bottom of this. We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is to ICE, get out of Minneapolis.
So President Trump has issued the following statement. I've just viewed the clip of the event that took place in Minneapolis. He said the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defence. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but he's now recovering in hospital. The reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. Now, I remind you that this is a couple of blocks away from where the Black Lives Matter organisation was born because of the death of George Floyd. Now, I suspect, Jennifer, looking at the crowds there, looking at the pictures of Renee Nicole Good, she's called Mrs. Good, she is going to become a poster girl now for those people who see ICE as the enemy and those who stop them as being the solution, the good people. The father of the deceased woman has spoken out. In fact, it's her mother, Donna Ganja, told The Star. We're seeing the photograph of her now, a blonde woman. Her mother has said she was one of the kindest people I've ever known. She said her daughter was known for caring for others throughout her life. She was extremely compassionate. She's taken care of people all her life. She was loving, forgiving and affectionate. She was an amazing human being. Donna Ganja expressed anger and pain over her daughter's death. It is so stupid, she said. She was probably terrified. After the shooting, photos and social media profiles claimed to belong to Renee Good began circulating online, and several users, apparently on X, shared what they said was her social media account. We're yet to have that confirmed. Her Instagram bio, I think you saw this, didn't you, Chapman, that her Instagram bio appears to say that she is a poet, a writer, a wife and a mum, and a guitar player from Colorado, experiencing Minneapolis. So what happens in America now? This is one of these moments which is going to be dissected and dissected.
Yeah, and I think it's something we've talked about often on this show about the polarization of America. And immediately you have out the gate, you have Chuck Schumer and Chris Murphy tweeting about, you know, DHS and ICE. And then you also have Stephen Miller saying this is a case of domestic terrorism. Kristi Noem calling her a domestic terrorist. A lot of accusations. Of course, you heard the mayor there as well. I think a situation like this, you need to investigate it. You need to find out what happened. I've seen two angles of it. The first one looked like they were completely out of line. The second one, you do see the officer nudged by the car, the one in front who shot. However, you could also look at it as he could have stepped to the side. You also saw her gesturing out the window. Was she telling them to drive by? Or was she taunting them? We don't know this yet. But what we do know is somebody was killed, and it was somebody who did not necessarily need to be killed because she was in a situation all of a sudden where there was, an opportunity to be killed. So I think, as always, people get really heated in these instances, and you need to take a step and find out what happened. And, we were discussing this earlier. The last year of Trump's first term was marred by an incident in Minneapolis. Now we're in the almost final weeks of his first year of his second term, and we once again see something that could potentially kick off in Minneapolis. And I think, Governor Walz did say we need to remain calm. However, he did add that the DHS narrative is propaganda. But I think, as always, you really need to find out what exactly happened.
Tim Dosha, let me bring you in. I'm looking at some of the reaction online here, and obviously a lot of these clips coming out of America. She's already being cast as a hero. She has the name Good, and lots of social media posts at the moment saying R.I.P. Renee Nicole Good, hashtag fight back, Nicole Good hero. Is this going to be a problem for President Trump?
Well, look, again, I think you really do have to get the facts here. We cannot speak about what we do not know. But I do want to speak to what we do know. If the police tell you to stop your car, you stop your car. If the police tell you to get out of your car, you get out of your car. If you don't do that, the police have no choice but to assume you have another motive, a sinister motive, not to anything else but against them. They have families at home too. They don't know what's going to happen. So many times, police say get out of the car, they give some levity, and then people pull a gun and they shoot the police officer. That happens in America, absolutely. And so what I'm saying is get the facts, but also we cannot forget. You have to listen to the police. They have authority in that situation. They are law enforcement agents. You can deal with, if you have a gripe with them, you can deal with that in court. You can deal with that online. You can deal with that in many different ways. So we have to tone down this rhetoric. You see Mayor Fry there, basically inciting a riot by dropping curse words like that. I mean, you think that's going to do anything but stoke vitriol, stoke the mob, stoke the riots? He knows exactly what he's doing, and it's the same thing that he did back in 2020 when Minnesota was burning and businesses were burning and people were losing their livelihoods. So look, I want to be very clear. It's a tragedy. It really is. But please, let's get the facts first, but let's also acknowledge what we do know.
Let's talk now, thank you, Tim, to the Director for the Centre of Homeland Security and Immigration, Cooper Smith. Good evening, Cooper. Thank you for joining us. So, first of all, your assessment of what has happened here generally. Who is in the wrong? Who is in the right? Is it too early to tell?
Well, I agree with your former guest. I think it is probably too early to tell. I agree that we probably need to wait and figure out, what do we know right now and what are we speculating on? For example, we don't know whether or not she had a weapon. We don't know if there was a mob behind, to the left on that video that everybody's seen. Sort of the context of the situation, I think, is critically important to figure out. I presume there's going to be many types of investigations here, not just the investigative journalists we're seeing on Twitter and X that'll continue 24/7, but I think there'll probably be a state or local investigation, probably federal from DHS and DOJ. So a lot more to come out, but I also agree that we do need to tone down the rhetoric and hope and pray that the citizens of businesses of Minneapolis are safe tonight and in the coming days.
Yeah, because the assessment seems to be that this woman, Renee Good, and others had been trying to obstruct the work of ICE throughout the day on multiple occasions, following them around, stopping them going into people's houses, maybe using their vehicles to build up barriers against ICE. And it has culminated in this tense situation in which, as President Trump basically said, that the ICE agents found themselves having to act in self-defence. Just tell our viewers, particularly here in the UK, the people who are protesting against ICE, what is it that they believe they are trying to do?
That's a great question. I obviously I can't speak for people with whom I completely disagree, but I presume many of these people, at their core, their ideology is one that does not support any type of immigration enforcement whatsoever. It doesn't matter, they'll fight him, President Trump and Stephen Miller and the rest of the administration, they'll fight him in the courts relentlessly. They'll fight him, obviously, on the streets. They'll literally assault and dox and threaten ICE agents, each and every day. That happened in Portland. It's happening in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in Charlotte, in Memphis, in New York. Like, I can go through every major American city where we've seen these operations take place. And of course, the one through line for all those cities is that most of them are sanctuary cities, which means that the local leadership there does not allow local police to work with federal immigration enforcement, which unfortunately is exactly the policy that leads to outcomes like this. Because of course, if ICE could go into a jail setting or could work with local police to, say, for example, have crowd control support or allow them to open up roadways where this woman was blocking a roadway. Instead, they have no backup from local police. So I think just from a policy perspective, it's critical that federal law enforcement has state and local support. And you're going to continue to see these types of events in sanctuary jurisdictions, unfortunately.
And what we know from President Trump is every time one of his initiatives gets thwarted, I want to use the example of the shooting of one of the National Guard in Washington, to the National Guard in Washington, D.C. just before Christmas. President Trump doesn't back off. He doubles down. That's what he does. He doubles down. He introduced more National Guard into Washington. He's introduced the National Guard into more states. I imagine in this instance, Cooper, that he will start to introduce more ICE agents across the country, not less. Is that the right thing to do?
I think so. Here's one thing that's not going to happen for sure. They are not going to back away from the mission that the American people gave them a year ago when President Trump won the election overwhelmingly. He ran on a platform of mass deportation. President Biden ridiculously and illegally let in 10 to 15 million people. We're just now beginning to understand, and unfortunately, we're seeing terrorist attacks across the country, and people like Borders Czar Tom Homan have been talking about this, and we're seeing that happen in real time. So I just want to remind folks, your viewers, why is ICE in Minneapolis to begin with? One, it's their sanctuary jurisdiction, but two, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal illegal aliens. And according to DHS, they've already picked up 1,300 pedophiles, gang members, and other types of dangerous people. So when you're out there protesting against these federal law enforcement, it really makes you shake your head. Like, do you support pedophiles, gang members, murderers walking in your street? It's crazy.
Yeah. Cooper, thank you so much. Insight there, fascinating insight. Cooper Smith there from the Centre for Homeland Security and Immigration at the America First Prosperity Institute. Moving on now. Pressure is increasing on Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to order a full inquiry into the Bondi terror attack. In just 24 hours, business leaders raised more than $200,000 to fund a national campaign demanding a royal commission into the massacre that killed 15 people. And today, for the first time, Anthony Albanese has refused to rule out a federal probe. Joining me now is businessman David Baxby. Good evening, David. Thank you, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Late Show Live. Now, when we say that there isn't a full inquiry into the Bondi terror attack, that seems extraordinary. What is the Prime Minister's justification in Australia for not holding a full inquiry?
Look, I think there's a couple of arguments that he's laid out. The first being that it would be too expensive and too time consuming to run the highest level of inquiry, which in Australia is called a Royal Commission, and that's something that we just disagree with fundamentally.
Especially if there are $200,000 already being raised, that excuse starts to dissipate somewhat. What conclusion might the inquiry come to that he doesn't want to hear?
Look, none of us know, and it's hard to speculate. I mean, this is very recent history here in Australia. I think the frustration that we all felt from a grassroots perspective is there just wasn't the level of responsiveness or accountability from the government to get to the bottom of what really caused this horrific attack. And I think what we're quite frankly a little bit surprised by is just the level of groundswell, grassroots response that we've had from over 3,000 people now to demand this inquiry. They've all put their hand in their pocket to write a cheque to fund this media campaign, which is rolled out across every major Australia newspaper, in every town and in every major capital city, with 2,000 signatures attached to it. All those people on that campaign sent us money to fund that advertising campaign. This is not just some sort of petition that you can click online and do it for free. This has cost everyone a reasonable amount of money, about $150 each, to fund this campaign, and we raised it in literally 24 hours.
Yeah. And how are the Australian people feeling about the terror attack now with the passage of time? It's incredibly traumatising for anybody that knows that area, especially. That's such a beautiful location, just one of the most heavenly places on earth for such a hellish event to happen. How is Australia processing that?
I think it's been a real wake-up call. I think there's been this level of intransience in Australia that we didn't quite think it would ever happen down here, and it has. And to have such a targeted attack on the Jewish community, where they were literally being assassinated in front of one of our most iconic landmarks. I'm not Jewish, and that was the wake-up call for me. I love this area, and I can't believe that an atrocity of this scale is being committed on our soil. And I think the frustration we all feel is that the government were dragging their feet, ensuring that we've got the highest level of accountability through a Royal Commission that is bipartisan, has got the freedom to call whoever they need to call in order to get to the bottom of, well, what did we know before the attack occurred? What were their motivations? And what changes need to be made to, first of all, prevent it, but second of all, ensure that the Jewish community, and frankly, any community down here in Australia, is protected from this ever happening again.
And your frustration, David, being that if those questions aren't answered, then you are vulnerable to future attacks.
Well, I think we are vulnerable. And I think that's the realisation that we've all had, is that we've had this groundswell of people join us. We've got 3 WhatsApp groups set up with over 3,000 people on it. And the level of commentary that's running through, this is not some sort of narrow Jewish community, think tank. This is 3,500 just like-minded citizens saying, we've had enough, we want answers, because we simply can't even comprehend that this could ever happen again, and we have to make sure it doesn't.
Yeah. And so do you expect that he will order a full inquiry?
Look, I just don't see how he can't. I mean, we've had 4 or 5 very significant groups of people. We've had a group of our most eminent justices and King's Counsel. We've had a group of very senior business leaders. We've had a really broad smattering of our Olympians come out and from all walks of life. And then we've got this other sort of grassroots appeal. I can't think of an angle within society that people haven't said enough's enough, and we want the highest level of inquiry conducted.
Yeah, well, good luck to you, David. I think it's incredibly worthwhile, and it's a real pleasure to have you on The Late Show Live to talk about your ambitions to make that happen. Thank you. All the best.
Appreciate your time.
David Baxby there, businessman in Australia. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, the Trump administration has just released America's new dietary guidelines. This is, if it wasn't for everything else that's happening in the world, this would be a lead story today, because I cannot tell you how revolutionary this change of advice is. It is about way more than just food. Also tonight, this.
What do you say to your victims, Hugh Edwards?
Oh, BBC's disgraced presenter Hugh Edwards. He's back in the headlines, and I'll tell you why after the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Later today, Storm Goretti will arrive, bringing strong winds, particularly in the southwest of England, but also some heavy snow for parts of England and Wales. It's across Scotland and Northern Ireland where we've got the risk of snow and ice first thing. Ice warnings in place until late morning. Down to the southwest by late morning, rain will have arrived. Many places actually just dry and bright today, but with increasing cloud across the south and those winds picking up in the southwest as well. Still pretty cold out there, temperatures in single figures, but maybe turning a bit milder into the far southwest, but not just turning milder, turning wet and very windy here too. And it's as the wet weather arrives, hits the colder air, we're likely to see some snowfall, particularly this evening over South Wales, but becoming more extensive overnight. And then the winds really pick up in the far southwest of England, an amber warning in place, gusts of 70, maybe 80 miles an hour, likely to cause some disruption. Things a bit calmer further north, but still cold, so again things likely to freeze up, to the potential for ice, but the snow at least easing over northern Scotland, which has been particularly badly hit so far this year. Now it's further south where we've got the greatest snow risk this evening over Wales and the Midlands, and perhaps later in the night into parts of eastern England as well. Amber warning in place over central areas for many centimetres of snow, likely again to cause some disruption. And it's going to be another pretty cold night, but with the cloud and the wind, temperatures hovering around freezing in the morning, which means we could still see some snow over parts of central and eastern England during tomorrow morning. A grim day across these eastern areas, wet and cold. Further west, it's a little bit drier and a little bit brighter, but again, it's still on the chilly side wherever you are. There are a number of Met Office warnings in place, including amber warnings for snow and for wind. Please check out the Met Office website for full details to see how you could be affected.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Honestly, if there wasn't so much going on geopolitically, there are massive changes coming out of America at the moment, and we're going to try and tackle as many of them as we can. Real policy difference that will make a massive difference to people's lives, actual lives in America, in relation to food and housing, etc. But anyway, let's have a quick look, if we can, at the front pages of the newspapers here in the UK. Let us start with, what are we looking at? What are we looking at? Let's look at The Sun. So The Sun is, it's got a TV drama. It says on The Sun investigation, look who is Hugh. Now, this is a TV drama which is going to be based on the story of Hugh Edwards. Martin Clunes is playing him. If you're listening on the radio, there's a likeness, quite an uncanny likeness, actually. He's very unrecognisable as Martin Clunes, playing Hugh Edwards on the front page of the paper. Would you want to watch that, Jennifer?
Probably not.
Me neither.
It just doesn't look that interesting to me.
No.
So it's a simple reason as that.
Is it even sort of appropriate? It's very quite early on for Channel 5. It's not the BBC. If the BBC were making it, I'd be absolutely outraged. But it's Channel 5 are making a drama about this guy.
It's a little soon.
Yeah.
And also, do you really want to, like, relive what he's done, which is, like, horrible? I mean, especially as a parent. You know,
yeah, and it's called, I can't see what the title is here, but it's called Power. I think it's called Power, the Hugh Edwards story or something. But I can guarantee you that it won't shine a light on the individuals who turned a blind eye to him working at the BBC. It's not really going to tell us anything we didn't already know. Right, let's move on, shall we? Which other story should we look at on the front pages of the paper? Oh, I have to say, I find this one on the front page of the Daily Mail very interesting. There'll be a lot of people who will be reading this. This is apparently an Oxford study showing that if you start taking the NLP jabs, otherwise known as the fat jabs, you're going to have to be on them for life. It says millions of Britons taking these weight loss jabs will need to stay on them for life, partly because you will put the weight back on again if you stop taking them. It's addictive.
Well, I mean, that's convenient for the pharmaceutical companies, isn't it? And I'm sure, well, you know, you're American and you've been living there. Like, when I was just there for the last couple of weeks, the one thing I'm constantly surprised about is when you watch TV, every ad is either junk food and then it's followed by some drug, whether it's one of these fat jabs or, you know, cholesterol or something to cure the crappy food you've just eaten. And so it's a very vicious cycle. And thank God we have Bobby Kennedy Jr. that's going to try to...
Well, it's also portion sizes in America too.
Oh,
I mean, I'm sure you've now
I've noticed.
learned how
me.
you know you could a breakfast could last you for
3 days.
Yes,
it's true. Tim, let me bring you in on this. Tim Doshi over in Washington D.C. Every company, Tim, in the world, ideally now, the big, massive corporations, what they want is to get people on a subscription model. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's a trans patient, you're going to be on drugs for life. Now we're finding out if you've taken a fat jab, you're going to be on it for life. The drug companies are just rubbing their hands together, aren't they?
Yeah, this is really an interesting thing. But I will say this, if you're concerned about public health issues like we are here in America, you know, Medicaid, Medicare is overrun, the jab can actually be really, really effective in kind of curbing those type 2 diabetics. Now, what you're talking about before we went to the break is for a type 1 diabetic, I'm insulin dependent type 1 diabetic, I didn't do anything or ask to get this, it just happened to me. I'm looking at that new food pyramid and I'm saying that's exactly how the doctor tells me to eat. You got to have the protein, you got to have the greens, you got to have the fruits, you got to have the vegetables. That's extremely important. And so I think that when you go to the jab, that becomes the altar, and we actually need to have the holistic approach, which is a diet and sleep and exercise and all of the above.
Yeah, well, that's perfect segue for me there, Tim, because we are literally about to talk about these changes to the food pyramid, because the Trump administration, and particularly the MAHA department, the Make America Healthy Again, headed up by the very controversial, in my opinion, rather wonderful Robert Kennedy Jr., they've released new dietary guidelines. They have inverted the food pyramid. So instead of all that cereal that we're supposed to be eating loads of, the food pyramid now puts steak, cheese and whole meat alongside vegetables as what should be the key to your diet. Bobby Kennedy Jr. described the guidelines as the most significant reset on nutrition policy in history. And you know what? He's absolutely right. He set limits on added sugar and encouraging people to eat real foods, with a push for greater consumption of animal fats. So joining me now is journalist Nina Tescholz. Nina, very good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I'm not quite sure where you are, so take whichever one fits you. But what was your reaction when you saw that the food pyramid had finally been inverted?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really an historic day. I have been working on this food pyramid a bit with the team over at the Kennedy administration, and it is remarkable that at the heart of the top of the pyramid is a giant slab of steak, and then there's an extra wide slab of butter in the middle of the food pyramid. Seed oils are nowhere to be seen. The amount of protein that you're supposed to eat has been virtually doubled from an amount that was meant to prevent starvation to the amount really needed for optimal health, especially for children and the elderly. I mean, all the foods that we have been told for literally 65 years that we should not eat, they were demonized. We were told they would cause heart disease. Now they are at the center of the diet. And I think there's really been no more important change in this administration on nutrition. And this one will have a tremendous impact, I really believe, around the world. I mean, this is the most important course correction for these food guidelines in 40 years.
Course correction. I love that phrase. That's exactly what this is. But tell us, Nina, why the pyramid was so bad for us in the first place. What happened to make the American government recommend, and therefore governments all around the world recommend, we're looking at the old pyramid here, apparently the majority of what we should have been eating was carbohydrates. Why did they say that?
It really started with the demonization of saturated fats that began in the 1950s. And when you demonize saturated fats, and we were told that they cause heart disease, then you're not supposed to eat any red meat. Low-fat dairy is the only kind that you can have. Once you take away meat and dairy, which we did decrease in the U.S. and in the U.K., then you what replaces that? What is left? Instead of steak for dinner, instead of a roast, which is what our parents and grandparents would have had, in comes pasta, grains, cereals, and that big bottom slab of the food pyramid was carbohydrates, starches, which are basically just sugar molecules holding hands. They become sugar the moment that you eat them. Your body, your sugar spikes in your blood in the same way that it does with a candy bar. And so Americans were told to eat 6 to 11 servings of grains every day originally. And that is, I think there's a large body of evidence now to show that that really fueled our diabetes and our obesity epidemics, among other chronic diseases. So let me say, one of the great things about this new dietary guidelines is they say that a low carbohydrate diet is one feasible option for people with chronic diseases. That is something that I've advocated for maybe a decade now, and I think is one of the most important changes to this food pyramid.
And the reason, Nina, in the first place, 65 years ago, grains were described and designated as being good for us is because they were cheap, and the FDA was effectively encouraged, let's be generous, they were encouraged by the big companies that made these very cheap, profitable cereals to recommend them. It was a type of corruption which has taken decades until today to overrule.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an issue of corruption, the influence of the food companies and the food and pharma companies on the pyramid. There have been subsidies of all of those crops, soy, cotton, wheat, grains, all of those have been subsidized. But I have to add, having written a book on this topic, that I think there's also a tremendous amount of bias in the expert community that has grown up against these fats. This is a hypothesis. The hypothesis that saturated fats cause heart disease has been in the expert community at the highest levels for 60 years. And so I do anticipate there'll be resistance to this pyramid because that expert opinion has been so deeply wedged into our thinking on diet and health for so very long.
And Robert Kennedy himself is a great example of somebody in his 70s eating steak, butter, vegetables, but predominantly animal protein, doing his press-ups, doing his pull-ups, showing people what healthy life you can lead. It's such a difference to what we have in this country. Our own Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, was asked the other day about something, and he said, I ate some butter, and was told by an aged radio presenter who didn't know what he was talking about, oh, that's not very good for you, Health Secretaries. And he said, oh, no, I mustn't eat much butter. And I was screaming at this clip, going, come on, drag yourselves into the 21st century. And we're so grateful, genuinely, to the Maha movement, to yourself, and to all the guys who are working out there in Washington, D.C., to have more evidence-based nutritional advice and evidence-based medicine. So thank you from everyone here in the UK. Hopefully we can follow suit. You've got a great Substack on this as well, I know, if people want to read it. It's Nina T. Schultz there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on The Late Show Live. Right, Jennifer, your feelings on that food pyramid. What great news.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I've always been somebody that eats like that. I like cheese, I like steak, I like all those sorts of things. I could probably have a few more vegetables. But, I think, and Nina, that well done to her and the group for doing this, but like eggs are the perfect example. They're affordable, they're readily available, tons of vitamins, and that's what people used to have for breakfast until the cereal industry got a hold of that former food pyramid. I'm sure there was some corruption going on, and say, no, actually, don't have eggs. It's bad for you. You should be feeding your children this, $7 box of sugary cereal. And then you wonder why kids have all these problems. And, she touched on obesity and all sorts of things. This is fantastic. It's back to just common sense eating whole foods.
And you know what, though, Chapman, we're going to get so much pushback. There's going to be so many people, as Nina said there, in the medical community, because, oh, no, this isn't true. Bobby Kennedy's a crank. He can't be listened to. This isn't true. Is it just going to be that it's going to take a long time to subvert?
I think it's like anything. Time will always tell.
Yeah.
What is a great idea one day? You don't really know the outcome. I mean, look, I eat a lot. I eat a lot of it. I mean,
you're in very good shape.
But the amount of food I eat. But I also know sometimes, if you're craving something, it's probably because your body needs that. And I've had friends who've switched to being vegans, and it hasn't worked for them because they've been making a vegan flavored cheeseburger, and finally they went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you need to eat meat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if your body's craving it.
And
So
what's brilliant now is that this food pyramid is now giving doctors permission to say you've got to eat meat. Tim Dosha, let me just finish with you and let's finish this. It's a good news story. People are watching this going, hang on a minute, I can wake up in the morning, I can have bacon, I can have eggs, mushrooms, tomatoes. You can have all that, just don't have the bread with it. That's what we're saying, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, as a type 1 diabetic, I need carbohydrates. I have to have them. You have to have carbohydrates. So as an ultra-marathon runner, if you don't have carbohydrates, you're dead at mile 10, not mile 100. So the bottom line is this. What I see is we need in our culture to instill moderation. I think that's the key word here. You got to have moderation. You can't just go and eat 6 steaks at night and not expect to get fat. Calories in, calories out, Bev. That's just the bottom line. And so I think it's a great thing to kind of invert that pyramid. Protein's better than fat, or protein's better than carbs, and I think that's a good thing.
Tim, I'll see you in DC next week. Jennifer, thank you. Chapman, thank you. Thank you at home for enjoying The Late Show live with me in London. Back in America next week. See you then. Night-night.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Later today, Storm Goretti will arrive, bringing strong winds, particularly in the southwest of England, but also some heavy snow for parts of England and Wales. It's across Scotland and Northern Ireland where we've got the risk of snow and ice first thing. Ice warnings in place until late morning. Down to the southwest by late morning, rain will have arrived. Many places actually just dry and bright today, but with increasing cloud across the south and those winds picking up in the southwest as well. Still pretty cold out there, temperatures in single figures, but maybe turning a bit milder into the far southwest, but not just turning milder, turning wet and very windy here too. And it's as the wet weather arrives, hits the colder air, we're likely to see some snowfall, particularly this evening over South Wales, but becoming more extensive overnight. And then the winds really pick up in the far southwest of England, an amber warning in place, gusts of 70, maybe 80 miles an hour, likely to cause some disruption. Things a bit calmer further north, but still cold, so again, things likely to freeze up, the potential for ice, but the snow at least easing over northern Scotland, which has been particularly badly hit so far this year. Now, it's further south where we've got the greatest snow risk this evening, over Wales and the Midlands, and perhaps later in the night into parts of eastern England as well. Amber warning in place over central areas for many centimetres of snow, likely again to cause some disruption. And it's going to be another pretty cold night, but with the cloud and the wind, temperatures hovering around freezing in the morning, which means we could still see some snow over parts of central and eastern England during tomorrow morning. A grim day across these eastern areas, wet and cold. Further west, it's a little bit drier and a little bit brighter, but again, it's still on the chilly side wherever you are. There are a number of Met Office warnings in place, including amber warnings for snow and for wind. Please check out the Met Office website for full details to see how you could be affected.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The big international news keeps coming with now 2 oil tankers seized and one of them with British assets being used. We'll discuss and debate that with, among others, John Bolton, who'll be with us in the studio tonight. We'll have a look at what was said by the police boss from the West Midlands yesterday and why I think he should be gotten rid of immediately. And our pubs face yet another threat, a proposed change to the drink drive laws that I think would be the death knell of every rural